جزاك الله خير. جزاك الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا. Alhamdulillah, it's a pleasure to be back and glad to be back amongst my brothers here, inshallah, on this special program of Quran-focused hot topics with our Ustad, Sheikh Jamal AbdiNasir. But before we start, we greet you all with the greetings of Al-Islam, the greeting of the people of Jannah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is one of the times, the rare times where you don't have to repeat the salam again. I feel the warmth in the salam. May Allah bless you all. Our guest is someone that doesn't need an introduction. Sheikh Jamal, mashallah, is someone that has له باع طويل وجهود كبيرة في القرآن والقراءات. He's a teacher, he's an imam, he's a khatib, currently based in London. He's someone that, mashallah, has obtained the 10 ijazas or an ijaza in all of the 10 qira'at from some of the world's greatest mashayikh of qira'at. And he's someone that, alhamdulillah, has traveled far and wide for the Quran and to spread the knowledge of the Quran. It's a pleasure to have him here in our masjid once again, Masjid Alfurqan. Ustad, I wanted to start with you. Like, alhamdulillah, Allah Azza wa Jal has given you a long relationship with the Quran, almost a known relationship and association with the Quran. So I wanted to ask, what does the Quran mean to you?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على خير خلق الله أجمعين وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما مباركا ميمونا ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. The Quran to every Muslim is his source of life. Just like we have that which nourishes us physically, everybody has that which nourishes them spiritually. And for the Muslimin, it is the Quran al-Kareem. It is very shameful that the Muslim has the Quran with him and he doesn't read it, nor does he look at it, nor does he give it any of his time. Should he do this, then the Muslim would see his life having a lot of change within it, and his life being a life of happiness and joy and goodness. For me, I realize that the more you come closer to the Quran and you recite the Quran and you spend time with the Quran, the more it beautifies one's life. And I began to find that within my life, and so I began increasing in that as much as possible. So long as you have some type of attachment, then inshaAllah ta'ala is all khair. But from the biggest ways that helped me, because the question is asking about myself, it is the recitation of the Quran specifically, qira'atul Quran. And some of the scholars of Islam, they consider this to be the greatest form of dhikr. So increasing in this as much as possible. I used to do this and I do this now, and I hope I can do it inshallah ta'ala for the rest of my life. And this has been that which has helped me the most in terms of my attachment to the Quran. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. I want to speak, mashallah, Sheikh, you've memorized the Quran at a young age. What are steps that are important for everyone to take that they are on the journey of memorizing the Quran?
On the journey of memorizing the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He looks very closely at the hearts of the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He selects the Anbiya and the messengers and the Rusul and the Malaika. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He selects those who He's going to give His Quran to. Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalatah. Allah knows best where to place His message. And the scholars, they say this means in terms of those who He gave revelation to, the messengers and the prophets, and also those who came after, the people of knowledge. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wish to see from you, O seeker of knowledge, dear Muslim brother or sister, in order for you to attain the Quran? The first thing, it is al-ikhlasu lillah. For you to have sincerity and for you to be seeking the Quran لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ وَلَيْسَ لِوَجْهِ النَّاسِ. For the sake of Allah alone. You only learn for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, to make this make sense, if a person was told that you are going to read Quran at a gathering, maybe like this one, and you are going to receive £5,000 for reciting the Quran. We will take this into two parts. One part is the action, which is reciting Quran, and one part is the intention. The action, is it good? Yes, it is. بكل الأحوال, it's always going to be good. No one can say reciting the Quran in and of itself is bad. Reciting the Quran is good. But is the intention the £5,000 or is the intention for Allah? Now, if the intention has become the £5,000, the action is still good. But the action has been ruined because of the intention. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are by their intentions. And this is why Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih, Al-Jami' al-Sahih is called. The first hadith that he brings is this hadith. And a lot of the scholars of hadith also bring this in their works. So for you to have the correct intention. Now, when you are learning the Quran, we said the first thing is ikhlas. The second thing is al-waqt. Al-waqt. For you to give time. Muthabara. Sabr. If a person has time and he's dedicating time and they are patient, inshaAllah ta'ala, it's a matter of time you're going to learn, inshaAllah. But everybody's busy nowadays. People are not dedicating adequate time for the Quran. They are dedicating their leftover time for the Quran. Imagine you now dedicating your leftover time for the Quran. You're not going to become from the pioneers and the leaders and the ulama of the Quran because you yourself, your effort is very weak. It is a very feeble type of effort. But if you dedicate the greatest type of effort and time, and you give the Quran your precious time, and you wake up for it, and you dedicate and you sacrifice from your sleep and your drinking and your eating and your socializing, then you'll see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will genuinely brighten up your life. So this is the second thing, al-waqtu. The third thing that we'll mention, inshallah ta'ala, will suffice ourselves with these three things. It is the guidance of a teacher. The guidance of a teacher. The Quran is not self-taught. In fact, no study academically or Islamically, religiously should be self-taught. Everything should be done through training. And the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, the Nabi, when he received the Quran, Allah gave him a teacher or a mudarris to read the Quran with, the angel Jibreel alayhi salam. So if the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam was given a teacher to read the Quran with, and he's better than us and greater than us, and we don't dispute this, we also need to have this. I believe these are the three things that will help the person the most. Al-ikhlasu, wal-waqtu, wal-mudarris, wal-shaykh. Ikhlas, sincerity, time, and also the teacher. Wallahu a'lam.
MashaAllah, Sheikh, you've mentioned a lot there. I think just a little bit about the second point, which is time. A lot of the times people ask, and I know people have asked you this previously, it's about how can they balance the commitment. You say don't give fadalat al-waqt, or the spare time that you have, but how do you manage to find the balance?
How do you manage to find the balance? Nowadays I'm getting this balance question a lot because it was asked in the Kilburn Masjid once, and everybody's asking about the balancing of the time. The balancing of the time, it's genuinely, time is what you make of it. It is what you make of it. Everybody has the same 24 hours in the day. Everybody has the same 7 days in the week, right? Everybody has the same 30 or 31 days. That's in terms of the Gregorian calendar. The Islamic calendar is not 31 days. It is 29 or 30. So this is the same for everybody, right? Every single person has the same time. But you find people in this time excelling and other people falling behind. What is the ayah that we remember and we remind ourselves of? It is the ayah of Surah Al-Muddathir. لِمَنْ شَاءَ مِنْكُمْ أَنْ يَتَقَدَّمَ أَوْ يَتَأَخَّرَ. Those from amongst you who desire to go forward and proceed, and those who desire to stay back and remain behind, fall behind. How do you balance? You balance by dedicating the most important things to the times that are the most important. You look at your schedule, you look at your life, you look at your routine and your timetable. You have priorities. That which ranks number one in terms of your priority must take the most important time. That which ranks second must take the second important time. وهكذا. But if you do it the flipped way, and you find that a person, for example, his career is very important, his family is very important, and let's say, for example, his health is very important, but he dedicates too much time to going to the cafes. So if it's the elders, they go to the cafes, and if it's the youngsters, they go to chaiwala, right? They go there, and you find later on, they can't wake up in the morning for work, or they miss university, they miss the first lesson in the morning, or their health is bad and they haven't gone to the gym for a long time. What's the reason? You started giving a lot more time to the things that ranked at the bottom. The things that ranked at the top, you gave it the time that you shouldn't be giving it. وهكذا. If you look at your schedule and you follow this system and you say, what's the most important thing to me? It is Quran, for example, or it is talabul ilm, seeking knowledge. I have to give it the most important time and the most amount of time. And the second one, the second, and the third. Then inshallah ta'ala, this is a nice way to balance. I don't think there's a real way of balancing it, to be honest, but this is an easy way to understand, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair. I actually wanted to pick on the third point as well, the teacher. But before that, say, like obviously you learn at home first. I think I've heard you mention before that you had a massive influence at home when it comes to the Quran, in terms of, you know what I'm talking about. So if you want to just share that with us, inshallah, just I think for the parents that are watching.
Jazakumullahu khairan. I think I was speaking to some of the brothers who came with me when we started our journey from London earlier today. About this. Honestly, really and truly, a person, if he finds one that inspires him to aspire, inspires him or her to aspire to be great, then inshaAllah ta'ala you are going to become great, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. That person that inspires you could be your parent, it could be your oldest sibling, it could be your friend, it could be your sheikh, it could be somebody that you don't even have a personal relationship with, but they inspired you. But when you do not have a role model, you do not have a qudwah, in the Arabic language it is called qudwah, then you are a person who is blind and walking. You're going to hit your head on every single place that you come across, right? So you need this person. And the more close the person can be to you and you can see if that person is in your circle, the better. For me, it all started with my mother and it still continues to be like that. Right now, she reads the Quran in terms of not just recitation, going through it with her own peers and her own friends. I think maybe about 5 to 6 hours every single day. MashaAllah. So when I walk into the house, I don't live at my mom's house anymore, I moved out. But when I go and I come out, it's very likely that she's going to be sitting there on the phone with the group conference call with the other aunties, reading the Quran. I don't, personally, I'll be honest, I will say it here and on the camera, there's nothing to be shy about. I don't dedicate 5 to 6 hours a day with the Quran personally. I don't. Unfortunately, I don't even dedicate, I think, even less than that. But my mother does. So this now, you understand what I mentioned a little earlier. If I continue to be inspired by my mother, inshallah ta'ala, what is hoped is, I'll take the same routes, right? But imagine now, this is a beautiful way to understand. Imagine I didn't have my mother. I'm already weak, nor do I have a role model, so I'm just going to get weaker. But now I'm weak, but I have a strong role model. Inshallah ta'ala, what's hoped is I'm going to go the same way, inshallah ta'ala. That's where it started off with me. And she sent us to an Islamic school. I've never been, it's only primary school, but beyond that, we always went to an Islamic school. That helped us learn the Quran as well and become close to the Quran. The first time I went to Hajj, it was linked with my Quranic achievement. When I finished the Quran in 2008, I was sent to Hajj for the first time as a prize or as a gift. So I always attribute these things back to my mother and how wise she was with our upbringing and our tarbiyah. And like that, inshaAllah ta'ala, a person will always be able to move forward. InshaAllah ta'ala. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakallah khair. And now coming to your teachers, mashallah, you've been blessed by having a lot of world-renowned mashayikh, such as Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Isa al-Ma'sarawi, Sheikh Abdirashid Sufi. And you said having a teacher is very important. But how does someone go about identifying a teacher and finding a teacher that is going to teach them the Quran and inspire them to learn the Quran and also act upon the Quran?
Just like teachers look towards the students that they take and they accept, I believe students should take a glance at the teachers that they wish to study with. Now, this is not something I'm saying, but this is something that the ulama of al-Islam, they say, إِنَّ هَذَا الْعِلْمَ دِينٌ. Indeed, this knowledge, it is your deen and your religion. فَانْظُرُوا عَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُونَ دِينَكُمْ. So take a very close look at who you take your religion from. If it's to do with the Quran, and that's what we're discussing tonight, I'd say you have to look at two qualities for the teacher. The first quality should be their understanding of the Quran and their comprehension of the Quran. If they are not strong in the Quran, then you're not going to become a strong person. Studying with someone weak doesn't make you strong. Studying with someone who's strong makes you strong. So the first thing is the knowledge of the Quran should be sound. And that means anything from the recitation of it, anything from the understanding of it, the tafsir of it, anything from the implications of the belief of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah with regards to the reality of the Quran and what we believe, the correct belief, and everything else, inshaAllah ta'ala, is attached to that. The second thing, and this is the thing that I believe a lot of people overlook, it is how far the Quran has reached in that teacher's life. Going back to the inspiration. If they just know the Quran and that's it, and they just teach it, and you come to the class and you read on the teacher and you leave the class and you come next week and that is it, you're not going to be inspired to do anything. But when the teacher, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed that teacher with skill and talent and tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are able to help you go on this path and remain on this path and always see it to be your path. It is something, when you make something personal to you, it has a lot of value. When you personalize something, it has a lot of value. So they can help you personalize this. This is your journey. And they encourage you in a good way. And you desire to learn the Quran because you've developed a bond with the teacher and the Quran. So these are the two things that you should seek. A teacher who has understanding of the Quran in terms of its knowledge, and a teacher who implements the Quran. And this is how the Nabi al-Kareem was, alayhi salatu wasalam. His character was that of the Quran. كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. So he was a alim of the Quran, and he was a amil of the Quran, alayhi salatu wasalam. He knew the Quran and he used to act by the Quran. So if you have one or the other, you are not the full picture. And to finish off this part, the hadith in Bukhari as well, on the authority of Uthman, خَيْرُكُم مَّن تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. And people, a lot of people, not everybody, when they're explaining this hadith in English, I found, they quote the hadith wrong. They say the best from amongst you is those who learn the Quran or teach it. They use the word or. Firstly, the hadith doesn't say or, the hadith says and. It says وَعَلَّمَهُ. And secondly, or wouldn't make sense, because if you learn the Quran but you haven't taught it, you're not doing right by the Quran. And then if you teach the Quran and you haven't learnt it, then you are not qualified to teach, so you're doing the wrong thing as well. So this is something to pay attention to, inshaAllah ta'ala. And these are the two qualities of the teacher. Wallahu a'lam.
Inshallah, jazakallah khair. After the journey of memorizing the Quran, and I don't want to get into your journey, Sheikh, because I think it is well documented, and maybe someday we'll get a true story and a breakdown of the journey. But I think just after memorizing the Quran, it's probably as important and as difficult, if not more important and more difficult, is to try to remember and to try to revise that which you've memorized and to try to stay on top of that which you've memorized. So what tips do you have for those that memorize parts of the Quran, that they can stay on top of it, that they can revise their word? How do you even pick a word?
Personally, I have my own way of explaining this. I tell the students that students should have a muraja'a system and a wird system. So a muraja'a system is the revision of the Quran and what you review. And this is what you read upon the teacher. The muraja'a is read upon the teacher. The hifz is read upon the teacher, and the muraja'a is read upon the teacher or peers, but it's read upon somebody. As for the wird is read by yourself. It is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The muraja'a, we say that it should be double the hifz. So if you memorize with your teacher 1 page a week, that is your maximum. And this is what is your standard, then you should do 2 pages minimum of muraja'a. And there's an understanding behind this. If your hifz is moving at a faster rate than your muraja'a, yeah, it's true, you'll finish the Quran soon, inshallah. But it'll be weak because you don't review fast enough. So the review has to be faster. Another way of understanding is, Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're going to be asked about the knowledge you learned. Why did you forget it? You may not be asked necessarily, why did you not finish the memorization of the Quran? Because the memorization of the Quran is not wajib. But that which you already memorized and you forgot, you'll be held accountable for this. That's another reason why we say this. The wird of the Quran should be something which is unique to yourself. And that will be heavily dependent upon how much Quran you have already memorized. So for example, if I memorize 10 juz of the Quran, then I'll be just breaking up that 10 juz, right? Because that's what I'm doing wird of. The wird is of 2 types. Wird of the whole Quran, which you should do as a Muslim, and wird of the Quran that is on your study, what you are learning, I already know 10 juz. So this 10 juz, I may decide I'm going to finish it every 5 days, 2 juz a day. 5 times 2 is 10. Or I may decide I'm going to finish it every 10 days, 1 juz a day. I may decide I'm going to finish it every 20 days, half a juz a day. This is something you should set. Al-Muhim, when you set it, do not violate it. That's the main thing. Do not violate it. This soul of it, you need to be in control. If you're not in control of it, it will take control of you. And it will tell you today you can read 1 juz and tomorrow you can leave it, and the day after you can read half a juz, and then 3 days after you can leave it. And remember, if you behave like this and you act like this and you go by it, firstly, you are never going to have any type of structure in your life. You are not. And secondly, what is going to happen is the shaitan is smart. The shaitan, and we were telling the brothers on our way here as well about this, the shaitan sometimes he invites people to ibadah, you know? Someone may think, how can the shaitan invite you to ibadah? The shaitan invites you to ibadah because he takes you away from something which is wajib and he brings you to something which is sunnah. That's ibadah. Why did he do that? If he can't take you to sin straight away, he takes you away from the virtue you are upon and he gives you something which has a lower virtue. So this sunnah act, it has virtue, but it's not as virtuous as the salah. Mathalan, we prayed Isha in Jama'ah. If he cannot make you leave Isha completely, he'll say, don't come to the masjid, pray Isha at home. The shaitan did this to you. You have no idea. And if you understand it like this, it makes sense. Because the salah in the masjid has more reward. But he wants you to have less reward. So similarly over here, the shaitan will do that. You don't need to read Quran. Maybe listen to it today. So don't fall into these traps. I'm not going to listen to the Quran because I'm leaving reading. I'm going to listen to the Quran if it's an additional act of worship. You have to outsmart the shaitan and outplay the shaitan. So the shaitan says to you, yeah, reading the Quran is good, but listen to it today. He's making you do something else. Listening to the Quran, the scholars do not agree you get the same reward. Some scholars say this, like Ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala and others, but it's not something agreed upon. Reading is. So you have to play it smart. Yes, shaitan, I'm going to listen to the Quran, but I'm going to add it to my reading. As for switching, no, you're not playing that game. And this is how you should be, inshallah. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Inshallah, Jazakallah khair. Sheikh, after memorizing the Quran, I want to know what inspired you to seek qira'at?
What inspired me to seek qira'at? I can't remember exactly what inspired me, but there were certain things that happened. I kind of had it tough in the beginning, to be honest, and I haven't said it like this before. When I was memorizing the Quran and I was coming towards the end, there were people who used to say to me, you know, this kid, he's going to forget the Quran. And I was very young and I used to find that heartbreaking that people are saying that to me, specifically when they're making so much effort. And they would say that I'm going to forget it because they're saying you're memorizing too much. You're memorizing sometimes I memorize 10 pages a day. You memorize 10 pages a day, it's half a juz. How are you going to remember this? You're going to forget by tomorrow. So I used to speak to my teachers a lot and say, like, people are putting me off and they're saying this and stuff. And this is the importance of the teacher. Everything links up. The teacher said to me that, who said this to you? Or Fulan said it to me, so-and-so. He said, this so-and-so who said it to you, he hasn't memorized Quran himself. How can he dictate or become your advisor? I was young, but when he said this, it made sense. In the beginning, I was just intimidated because he was older than me as well. He's an older person saying this. Any child now from this madrasa will feel intimidated, right? But when the teacher or the parent understands how to bring back the conscience of the child or the student, it is something amazing. He said, Akhi, this person himself doesn't know Quran. Forget about it. They failed. They are fashioned themselves. It's a bit strong, but that's what he said. I said, khalas, it makes sense. Al-Muhim, the point is this. I finished the Quran. That brother now, we have an amazing relationship. And every time he sees me, he feels guilty. I can see it from him that he used to say that to me before. And yet, he didn't finish the Quran as well. So the teacher was right. I told him he didn't finish the Quran. Inshallah, he finishes. And he's not going to hear this anyway, so it's okay. He's going to finish, inshallah ta'ala. So that is regarding that. The other part to this question is, I forgot the question actually. Forgot the question.
What inspired you to seek qira'at?
So the other part to this is the mashayikh, they would be able to plant the seeds correctly. So he used to say to me, look, alhamdulillah, Allah granted you the memorization of the Quran. You finished very early and you did itqan of it. And Allah has blessed you with understanding. And he used to say this to me. So begin the Quran in terms of its other riwayat and qira'at, and you can do it right now. If you benefit from this young age that you have, you can learn it. So I started, and it became addicted. So the first one was based on him telling me to do it. And after that, I wanted to do it more and more and more and more because it's the Quran. The Quran has this magnetic type of relationship with the Muslim. If you really do it with a heart that's looking for khair, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you the khair. When you're in search for treasure, you find the treasure. When you're not in search, you could walk down the street and walk past treasure. When you're looking though, when your eyes are open and your heart is open, you find it. It's going to be there, inshaAllah ta'ala. So that's how it happened. Wallahu a'lam.
I notice this a lot sometimes, that some people may not have necessarily finished memorizing the Quran, or maybe not even memorized a substantial amount of the Quran, but yet they are reciting qira'at and they are reading and they're trying to copy different modes of the qira'at. I wanted to ask, when should someone start the qira'at? Is there a prerequisite?
When should someone start the qira'at? The person should start the qira'at of the Quran. We'll give two answers. The first answer should be when they have mastered one qira'ah or one riwayah, and this should be under the understanding of the teacher. Because sometimes you think you've understood, but maybe you haven't. I didn't do it without my teacher's approval. And I believe if I did and I jumped, then I wouldn't be able to. Like this surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Asr, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. It tells us how to behave as a Muslim. العلم والعمل والدعوة إليه والصبر على الأذى فيه. إلا الذين آمنوا, that's علم, وعملوا الصالحات, that is عمل, وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالحق, it is to give da'wah, and وتواصوا بالصبر is to have patience. So imagine now if you seek the ilm and then you skip amal, for example, and you go to da'wah and you start calling people when you don't even implement anything, you'll get things wrong, right? And it will stunt your growth. And you will not come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because you're taking a path other than the path of the ai*imma and the prophets. But if you do it the right way, you do it the right way. So the teacher will tell you, he will determine, now is time for you to learn this science. Open the science and learn it. So this is what happened with me. And the second answer would be when you have mastered the Quran itself. You have mastered the Quran, riwayat Hafs and Asim, you've understood it well, you memorized it well, your itqan and your reading is good, and the teacher's happy with it, and you've read the whole Quran, and maybe you even obtained an ijazah, an authentic chain back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then after that, inshallah ta'ala, you can move forward. So these are the two answers.
Jazakallah khair. I wanted to ask Sheikh, what is the difference between tafsir and tadabbur?
What is the difference between tafsir and tadabbur? Tafsir is understanding the meanings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended by His speech. That's a comprehensive answer. It doesn't mean understanding the meaning of the Quran. That's not enough. If you say understanding the meaning of the Quran, according to whom? Understanding or uncovering the meanings of the Quran in accordance to what Allah intended by it, because it's His speech subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is tafsir. And it is going to be dependent upon the tafsir of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, as well as his disciples and their disciples and the early generations. As for tadabbur, it is something that comes later. It comes from the word dubur, which means behind something. And it means after you've understood the Quran correctly, correct tafsir, you now reflect upon the Quran in terms of that which you benefit from it, in terms of the deeper messages or the divine messages that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He sent down in the Quran. For example, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said He created the skies and the earth and all that's in between in 6 days, which is an ayah from the Quran. Now you do not take this literally, you go and you see that which the ulama have said with regards to this ayah, which is tafsir. After you do the tafsir, then comes tadabbur, then you reflect, then you look up at the sky and you look down at the earth and you think about all of this and the majesty of Allah and etc. And that is tadabbur, wallahu a'lam.
Is it dangerous doing tadabbur without understanding the Quran?
Yes, it is very dangerous. Tadabbur is a skill set as well. People think that tadabbur is not a skill set. And there's a misunderstanding. The reason is because Allah tells everybody in the Quran to do tadabbur. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ or أَفَلَمْ يَدَّبَّرُوا الْقَوْلَ. So it's true, Allah has commanded everybody to do tadabbur. But Allah has commanded everybody to pray salah as well. See? You do not say just because we have been commanded to do this, then we do it how we please. Because you've been commanded to pray, but you don't pray as you please. Correct? Tadabbur is a skill set. Some of the ulama, they do say though, if you do a tadabbur yourself, and it's not based on a skill set or training or knowledge or ilm, and it helps you with your iman, then keep it to yourself. Do not spread this to the masses or even your family or people around you, lest you may spread and pass on something that is incorrect. So with the condition, if it's helped you, maybe it's increased you in iman, but it could not be right. So this thing, keep it to yourself, and at the same time verify it with those who are more knowledgeable, if it is a right istintaj and if it is a right conclusion that you have reached, inshaAllah ta'ala. But the asl is that it is something that should be studied and learnt under the care or training of those who are knowledgeable. Allahu a'lam.
Thrown in a little bit of a follow-up. One of the requirements, obviously, of tadabbur and understanding the Quran is the Arabic language. MashaAllah, Sheikh, like those that know you know that you're fluent in Arabic and have a very good grasp of it. Even though you're raised in the UK. And I wanted to know, what's the story behind it? How did you manage to learn Arabic fluently, and what advice do you have for people learning Arabic?
Okay, I don't believe my Arabic is fluent yet, Sheikh Ubaydah. Jazakallahu khairan. I don't think it's fluent yet at all. But what's helped me in the beginning is living with the language. Whether that means traveling a lot and spending a lot of time, the years that I was going through qira'at specifically, I was in the Muslim lands, whether it was Qatar or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, and spending a lot of time there and just immersing yourself with Arabs and in an Arab land and everything in Arabic, then you learn Arabic, right? Like I always give this analogy, and it seems to make sense, that the majority of those who went to the school system here, you went to primary school, then secondary school, then there's college, and then there's university. In primary school, English is obligatory. It is part of the curriculum. Secondary school, the same. It is part of the curriculum. When you finish secondary school and you finish year 11, whether you go for A-levels or you go for sixth form or wherever you go for college, then you choose your modules right after that. So if you choose English, then you've chosen it. Otherwise, it's not wajib anymore. Similarly, when you get to university, if you choose English as a degree, yes, otherwise it's not. Okay, question. If those who went through the academic system, some of them they didn't do, for example, myself and other brothers here, we didn't learn English as a module at college or at university. So the last time we learned English through the academic system was when? Year 11. Okay, is the English we're speaking today on the level of a year 11 student, or has it advanced? It's advanced. Tayyib, you're saying that you haven't learned English officially since year 11. How is it advanced? It's because this land is a land of English. The people that speak are speaking English. Now we're in a masjid, we're talking about deen. The deen is being spoken in English. Everything around here is written in English. The Quran itself is written in English. Tayyib, your English is going to now become better. A lot of our parents who came from the countries back home and they didn't go through the education system like we did, they now learned English after being here for 20 years, 30 years. And they didn't go through ESOL or this stuff, right? They didn't do it, but they learned. They're living the language. This is the biggest key to learn Arabic. Live the language. The biggest key is not Al-Arabiya Bayna Yadayk or Medina book. It's not this. This helps, it's Musa'id. Because you go Medina book once a week. That's it. But every day if you speak it. Like some of the brothers, we tell them in London, your phones, make it in Arabic. Change the whole language. I said, but we don't know how are we going to navigate through the phone. I say to them that it's a psychological thing. You've already memorized where your apps are. You memorize where everything is anyway. So just go through it. Plus the apps and everything has the same icon. Settings looks the same. WhatsApp has the same color. Just because it's in Arabic and it says WhatsApp, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be something you can't understand. Everything is the same. So we told them this, and then they understood that analogy, and they began, and a lot of them, they learn Arabic like this. Settings now on the phone, in Arabic, i'dadat. Oh, that's how you call it, i'dadat. Okay, mashallah. Messages, text messages, ar-rasail, okay. WhatsApp is still WhatsApp. Makes sense. Now you even learn how to write WhatsApp in Arabic. Some people didn't know that. So there's a fa'idah in this. Live the language. Another group of brothers, what they do in London, maybe here as well they do it, is that they watch a lot of cartoons. Islamic cartoons or even Islamic documentaries that have subtitles in Arabic. They watch it like this and they begin learning like this, shwaya, slowly, and they start learning it. So what's helped me the most and what's helped students that I interact with in the UK that have been raised here is to live the language as much as possible. Everybody's not going to get a chance to go to Egypt. Everybody's not going to get a chance to go to Medina University. It's better to embrace it. Otherwise you're going to be heartbroken. But you can have a time here which is much better and smoother than the time people have in Egypt. You won't get the Muslim environment, or you won't get the Arab environment because it's not an Arab land. But what will you get? you get a lot more than the people that went over there. You just need to know how to do things. So living the language, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair. Do sins have an effect on our relationship with the Quran?
Do sins have an effect on our relationship with the Quran? Absolutely. Sins have a massive impact on our relationship with the Quran. This hadith that we were mentioning earlier, a companion by the name of Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, he narrates this hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, that when a person is surrounded by fitan, and the shubuhat and the trials and tribulations and the desires and temptations of this world present themselves to him, then a nukta sawda, he says, alayhi salatu wasalam, a black dot is placed on this person's heart. If he doesn't dodge this, if he doesn't avoid it, if he doesn't come away from it, if he doesn't make tawbah from it, then a second black dot, then a third black dot, then a fourth black dot. Until the entire heart, it becomes black after this. The Prophet ﷺ says he doesn't recognize good anymore for being good, nor does he recognize evil anymore for being evil. Rather, good things seem bad to this person. Bad things seem good to this person. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Kalkuzi mujakhiyan." It's like the upside down cup. This cup now has content within it, although it's nearly finished, it's the water. If I tilt this now and I put it upside down, everything's going to come out. This is how the heart of the person has become. This is due to sins. So now the Quran will become difficult for you. Reading the Quran, sitting there for 10 minutes is too much. You feel tired. Why are you tired? You can run around for 1 hour. You can go to the gym for 1 hour. When you do this, you sweat. You're not sweating over here. When you go to the gym, you pay membership. Quran is free. You don't have to pay any money. What's going on? There's something going on within. What is it? It's the sins. And some of them attributed to Waki', the teacher of Shafi'i, but some say it's not authentically attributed to him. But it's that famous line that we all know. And he says that my teacher Waki', he advised me to leave ma'asi. فَأَرْشَدَنِي إِلَى تَرْكِ الْمَعَاصِ وَأَخْبَرَنِي أَنَّ الْعِلْمَ نُورٌ. And he told me that knowledge is light. The Quran was described as light. Light and the darkness of sins do not come together. How? When the Prophet ﷺ, Allah said to him in the Quran, we have given you this Quran so you can take people out of darkness into light. كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ إِلَيْكَ يَا مُحَمَّدْ لِتُخْرِجَ النَّاسَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ أَنْتَ مَا زِلْتَ فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ. You are still in dhulmah. You are still in sins. So sins do not help. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, sins, they affect even your comprehension. You become slower. You become slower. A page used to take you 1 hour, now it takes you 2 hours. Now 2 hours go by and you don't even know when the time's going to end. It's taken so long, this page, I've been doing it for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 week. It is because of the sins. But if the heart is a light heart and you cleanse it from sin, inshaAllah ta'ala, it will make your journey a lot more easier. Wallahu a'lam.
One sin in specific, if I could follow up with that, is it fair to say music is one of the sins that has a massive impact and almost ruins the relationship with the Quran?
100%. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, the student of Ibn Taymiyyah, he says that music, famous statement of his, music and Quran cannot gather or come together in one heart. You're going to end up going for one. Even if a person says, well, I know people who listen to Quran sometimes and they then listen to music sometimes, they're not listening to both of them attentively, and not both of them are impacting their heart and their life and their soul. La. Yeah, everybody can just put on AirPods and listen to music and then change and listen to Quran. Which one is the one that is impacting your heart and your soul? Which one is feeding your heart and giving it provisions and giving it life? It's the music for some people. Other people is the Quran. And you will know that the two can't come together, because if a person attempts to bring the two together, one is going to overpower the other. Most of the time it's going to be the Quran. Except for the people who are weak and people who have given into the shaitan. Then maybe these people, the music may take over. The Quran al-Kareem, it is the kalam of Ar-Rahman. The music, it is the kalam of shaitan. And the shaitan has been cursed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these two do not come together. That's why some of the ulama, they say, they encourage nasheed. Some of them, they encourage anasheed. They say, come to nasheed. If you want to come out of music, come to nasheed and then come to Quran. Because some people can't make that big step. So come to a common ground first. But they're telling you that nasheed is an alternative to music, because music and Quran don't come together. So this is the answer. Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim and others, they mention it. Quran and music do not come together. It is perhaps the biggest destroyer for the person who's trying to attain the Quran. Allahu Akbar.
Jazakallah khair. The Quran is known as a shifa. how can we use the Quran as a cure for our problems and our issues?
How can we use the Quran as a cure? The Arabic language uses two words for cure. One word is shifa, and another word is, what's another word? Afiyah. Another word? Sihha. Another word? Ilaj. Okay. What about dawa? That's a word, right? Medicine, cure. طيب. Some of the scholars, they say dawa and shifa, what's the difference between them? They say dawa, it may make the person better, it may not. Shifa, it always makes a person better. So if that's correct, what has revelation said brings shifa? What has revelation said about that which makes you better? And what has revelation pointed the finger at? Only two things. This word shifa has been used in the Quran for two matters only. One is the Quran itself. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ Surah Al-Isra. And the other place is Surah Yunus alayhi salam. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ قَدْ جَاءَتْكُم مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. It's a cure for that which is in the chests, meaning the hearts. These two places, Quran has come to speak about shifa for Quran. What's the other thing that the Quran says shifa is found within it? Who knows? What's the other thing? Al-asal, honey. وأوحى ربك إلى النحل أن اتخذي من الجبال بيوتا ومن الشجر ومما يعرشون ثم كلي من كل الثمرات فاسلكي سبل ربك ذللا يخرج من بطونها شراب مختلف ألوانه فيه شفاء للناس. فيه شفاء للناس. What comes out of the stomach of the bee? شفاء للناس. It is asal. عجيب. These two things the Quran mentions, it is shifa. Quran and asal, honey. That means these two, the shifa within them and the cure within them, it is ultimate. You will definitely be cured. طيب, how so? It requires one thing. It requires many things, but one main thing. What is it? Al-yaqeen, certainty. If I picked up the Quran and I already believe I'm going to die, then you're going to die, my friend. You're going to die. If I picked up the Quran and I know that I'm not going to make this sickness, I'm not going to see it at the end, then that's what's going to happen. And Allah has said that I am as you think of me. You already think evil, you already think bad, you already have bad opinions. So the Quran now, you're turning to it, but not with conviction. But if you turn to the Quran with conviction, there are people that have been cured from all of their problems. There's one brother. He was a student of mine at the time. And he was going through a major heart issue. In fact, the doctors always will say to him, in London, you're going to die, you're going to die. Very plain and white, because they felt like they couldn't help him. So in order to prepare him, they told him, it's very hard for us to tell you this, but it doesn't seem like you're going to live for very long. We'll do what we can. So he, mashallah, very righteous brother, he tried his best to remain steadfast and turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Myself and another teacher of his main teacher, gave him a lot of advice to turn to the Quran and to spend a lot of time with the Quran with conviction. And his other teacher, his main teacher, in fact told him, channel the Quran, channel all your intentions with the Quran. Inshallah ta'ala, you'll see a change, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now you think about this now. Somebody who the doctors are saying you're going to die. His heart is not a normal place in the body. The heart, there's pain in the heart. He can't breathe properly. Would he believe this? He would believe it if he's a righteous person who's attached to Allah. If he's not a righteous person attached to Allah, now is a time that it will become clear that you're not attached to Allah. This brother, he believes what the teacher said. He said, I'm going to do it. And obviously you don't have another option anyway. So you don't have a choice. You've already been told by the doctors you're not going to make it. So you only have this option. So he turned to the Quran with conviction and yaqeen. He said, I've never felt so healthier in my life after I was given this advice than before. I wasn't like this. So not only was I cured, but I felt better and more healthier than before. I went to the doctor. I went back to the doctor. And when they did a checkup on me, they said that you were not meant to make it this long. You were meant to die a long time ago. Not only are you still alive, but there's no trace of anything anymore. Did you go to another clinic? Did you go to another GP? Or did you go private? Yeah, I went private. I went to Allah. I read the Quran. That's what happened. He told them. And I know another story like this of my Sheikh, in fact, his son, Ali. He said that this man, he couldn't even walk properly. So they told him, this is in Qatar, and I actually don't know if I should share this to be honest. But I will share it and then we can cut it. I'll share it to the people who are here. He was going to the hospital a lot, going to the hospital, similar problem, but it wasn't the heart, it was the stomach. He couldn't even walk properly. The doctors said to his father, the Sheikh, they said to him that there's no point in him being in hospital, we might as well keep him at home and we'll make visits, we can't help him. This thing is too much. So they said, discharge him, but just keep in mind that anything can happen, meaning he can pass away. So the Sheikh, he said, I was going to discharge him anyway, because you're not doing a good job. We want to go to Wahi, we want to go to Quran. The Sheikh said, we began a program every day in the house to read the Quran upon him. I think he said every 2 days we finish the Quran. Every day, 15 juz. Half Quran every day. Next day, half Quran, half Quran, half Quran, half Quran. He said we did this for about a couple of weeks. I can't remember exactly how long. But the point of the story that I do remember, which is very inspiring, is this part. He said when we did this, he's slowly getting stronger, slowly getting better, slowly getting better. We took him back to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor was surprised because when they discharged him on a wheelchair. When they brought him back after being at home, they brought him back walking on his feet. That's the part. When the Sheikh said that is what stood out for me. Wheelchair, a person who can't walk, who's very, khalas, there's no energy within him. But how did he come back? He came back after being given shifa by the Quran. So this is how you get it. Bil yaqeen, conviction. If you do this, inshallah ta'ala, you'll be cured. And this is for physical problems, this is for spiritual problems, this is for mental problems, this is for anything. We all go through problems. Some of us go through problems with how we think. People around us and waswas, did he say that? Did she say that? Do they like me? How they feel? This is an illness. A person should acknowledge it. When you're always thinking about people and what people think and you have no concrete evidence on anything and you just go by how your emotions are, it's a type of sickness. A person has to know that. It's not something which is healthy. So this now can be treated by revelation and Quran with conviction, inshallah ta'ala.
SubhanAllah, time does fly, and inshallah we're just coming towards the end. There are just a couple of more questions inshallah before we close. Perhaps we spoke about memorizing the Quran and also of relationships, and I wanted to ask, how can you start your journey with the Quran? If you're someone that you don't even know how to read the Quran, then how can you start?
If you're somebody who wishes to start, then inshallah ta'ala, start and take the first step. The first step, I would say, is your niyyah. It's not going to a Quran class. That's my answer anyway. Or finding a teacher, or doing all of this, or buying your first mushaf. I think it's the niyyah. What is your intention? Why are you learning the Quran? Because if you lose the intention, you lose the action as well. So make an intention, firm intention. You're going to begin inshallah ta'ala, and you're going to seek the goodness of the Quran and the virtue of the Quran, and Allah is going to better you through it and bless you through it and grant you that which you wish from the dunya and its delights and the akhirah and its delights. Begin like this. Then after this, go find the correct teacher. We mentioned the attributes of the teacher earlier today. Follow those attributes, find the teacher. And then after this is about remaining steadfast and never giving up. Remember that the ulama, they say that qaleel da'im, it is better than kathir munqati', right? That which is little, but you do it all the time, it is better than that which you do a lot, but you stop. And how many of us have this problem? So many of us. We start Quran or we start anything. We start, we're doing good, we're on a high, and then we stop. And we stop for how long? For a very long time. And we have to hear a very spiritual booster, someone has to come, or a big thing has to happen in our life, we have to go back. And then again, most likely we'll fall off again. Your whole life is going to be like this then. You rather do one ayah a day, one ayah a day, one ayah a day. I was telling a brother this just the other day. And I said, I think if you follow the one ayah advice, you're not going to do one ayah. He said, why do you say that? He said, I'm not that pathetic. Why would you say that to me? I said, it's not because I think you're pathetic. It's because you have to know how the human works. The human, if he starts today, I'm going to learn one ayah, he'll learn the ayah maybe in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. Then he'll feel like, I'm not miskeen, I can learn more. But this is falling into the same trap as before. When you learn more, you're going to learn a lot today and then you're not going to do it for the next few weeks. Allah doesn't want that from you. Allah wants you to do something which you can take control of, but do it all of the time. If you pray Qiyamul Layl tonight, you start when you go home tonight until just before Fajr, but you don't do it until Ramadan, that's your next Qiyamul Layl or Taraweeh. That's not what Allah wants. Allah wants you to do every single day, bit by bit. So this is the advice. A person, he starts off with the Quran, he makes the intention. If you want to start your journey, then you find the teacher, then you begin, then you take an intention with yourself that you are not going to stop, inshaAllah ta'ala. You're always going to move forward despite whatever happens. And even if you do a little bit, you're always consistent, inshaAllah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair. My last question is, a lot of people have the issue of they only recite the Quran from Ramadan to Ramadan. And sometimes maybe just Jumu'ah to Jumu'ah, Surah Al-Kahf every Jumu'ah. And not much recitation or even interaction with the Quran happens outside of these times. Is there a minimum connection that should be between a Muslim and the Quran?
Some of the scholars, they say every 40 days, the general Muslim should complete the Quran. Some of the scholars, they say this. Other scholars are a bit more lenient and they say every 30 days, meaning every month. And they would consider this to be hujran. It will be considered abandonment if you don't do this. So you finish the Quran once a year, for example, they will consider it to be hujran, that you've abandoned the Quran in terms of recitation. So you do not do this. You read the Quran as much as you can, inshaAllah ta'ala. 1 juz a day is not asking very much. You have 24 hours in the day. A juz takes 30 minutes average for most people. Even if you're very slow, it takes you 1 hour. That's 23 hours you still have left to sleep and eat and drink and work out and socialize and see your friends, and you still have 23 hours. The Quran is not taking 10 hours or 5 hours from you. So I think there's no reason. It is just a shameful act, like we mentioned before, that we have made accustomed to ourselves. And the last thing I'll say on this matter is, I think it becomes even more shameful, and this is a very strong point to mention, when a person reads and makes time for all other types of books except for the Quran. Whether it's worldly books or even religious books that speak about deen. Because religious books that speak about deen, they are nowhere near the Quran. Even all of them. Even the ones that explain the Quran are not like the Quran itself. The ones that explain the Quran are only there because of the Quran. Should the Quran not be there, the ones that explain it won't be there too. Let alone a person who reads novels and works and fictions and facts of the people of the dunya, and he doesn't read the book of Allah. What if Yawm al-Qiyamah Allah Jalla wa Ala says to you, your heart now, when I created you, your heart was empty. You've come back to me now after living in the dunya for so long, and you have no trace of Quran in your heart. But you have Harry Potter and you have all these things in your heart and all these books are in your heart. Is that what I created you for? That was not what if this conversation takes place between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّ الَّذِي لَيْسَ فِي جَوْفِهِ شَيْءٌ مِّنَ الْقُرْآنِ كَالْبَيْتِ الْخَرِبِ. Indeed, the one that has no Quran in his heart, no trace at all. لَا يَقْرَأ لَا يَفْقَهْ. He doesn't understand, he doesn't read, there's no Quran, he doesn't even know what it is. This person, his heart is like the destroyed house, the ruined house. What will happen? It will develop a smell. Abandonment has happened, so squatters and rodents and animals will enter. Thieves would enter. No one's looking up, maintaining. Your heart will become like that as well. So I'd say we are in need of the Quran, and the Quran is not in need of us. If you go to the Quran, inshaAllah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you through it, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Remember, the hafiz is Allah. فَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ حَافِظًا. Allah will protect you through your hifd and protection of the Quran as well. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Hifdallah.
So inshallah, just before we conclude, I wanted to conclude on the verse of Allah Azza wa Jalla and asking our Sheikh, Ustad Jamal, to maybe recite a short passage for us, inshallah, and we'll conclude on that note. Jazakumullah khair.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أخاه قال إني أنا أخوك فلا تبتئس بما كانوا يعملون فلما جهزهم بجهازهم جعل السقاية في رحل أخيه ثم أذن مؤذن أيتها العير إنكم لسارقون قالوا وأقبلوا عليهم ماذا تفقدون قالوا نفقي الصواع الملك ولمن جاء به حمل بعير وأنا به زعيم. قالوا تالله لقد علمتم ما جئنا لنفسد في الأرض وما كنا سارقين. قالوا فما جزاؤه إن كنتم كاذبين. قالوا جزاؤه من وجد في رحله فهو جزاؤه كذلك نجزي الظالمين. فبدأ بأوعيتهم قبل وعاء أخيه ثم استخرجها من وعاء أخيه كذلك كدنا ليوسف ما كان ليأخذ أخاه في دين الملك إلا أن يشاء الله نرفع درجات من نشاء وفوق كل ذي علم عليم. قالوا إن يسرق فقد سرق أخ له من قبل فأسرها يوسف في نفسه ولم يبدها لهم قال أنتم شر مكانا والله أعلم بما تصفون. قالوا يا أيها العزيز إن له أبا شيخا كبيرا فخذ أحدنا مكانه إنا نريك من المحسنين. قال معاذ الله أن ناخذ إلا من وجدنا متاعنا عنده إنا إذا لظالمون. فلما استيئسوا منه خلصوا نجيا. قال كبيرهم ألم تعلموا أن أباكم قد أخذ عليكم موثقا من الله ومن قبل ما فرطتم في يوسف فلن أبرح الأرض حتى يأذن لي أبي أو يحكم الله لي وهو خير الحاكمين. ارجعوا إلى أبيكم فقولوا يا أبانا إن ابنك سرق وما شهدنا إلا بما علمنا وما كنا للغيب حافظين. واسأل القرية التي كنا فيها والعير التي أقبلنا فيها وإنا لصادقون. قال بل سولت لكم أنفسكم أمرا فصبر جميل عسى الله أن ياتيني بهم جميعا إنه هو العليم الحكيم. وتولى عنهم وقال يا أسفا على يوسف وابيضت عيناه من الحزن فهو كظيم. قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر يوسف حتى تكون حرضا أو تكون من الهالكين. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. يا بني يذهبوا فتحسسوا من يوسف وأخيه ولا تيأسوا من روح الله إنه لا ييأس من روح الله إلا القوم الكافرون.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah. May Allah reward our Sheikh and all of the attendees and all of those that are watching. Jazakumullah khair, and hopefully inshallah see you all next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.